It's the story of two William Shakespeares. One is the William Shakespeare we know in the year 1582 in Stratford-upon-Avon. At that time, he's 18 years old. In my book, he's stuck at the local Stratford Grammar School teaching Latin to 6-year-olds. He has yearnings to be an artist and a playwright, but his family is down on its luck, and he's having a hard time getting out of Stratford. He's stuck in a rut. But his life changes when a mysterious messenger asks him to deliver a box of sacred relics from Rome to an old family friend. And he finds out that his family is part of a secret Catholic dissident network. And he ends up being pursued by Queen Elizabeth's anti-Catholic priest hunting forces. Meanwhile, the other William Shakespeare is a would-be Shakespeare scholar at UC Santa Cruz in 1986. His name is Willie Shakespeare Greenberg. And he's also stuck in a rut, partially because he's sort of lost in the mists and forests of Santa Cruz and doing very little with his time besides getting stoned and chasing co-eds. But he's ostensibly working on his master's thesis about William Shakespeare, which is based on the thesis that Shakespeare was in fact a Catholic dissident. And his life changes when in the foothills of Santa Cruz he discovers a giant psilocybin mushroom. And because he's out of dough, he agrees to deliver it to a mysterious collector of such items at the Northern Renaissance Fair in 1986. And he finds himself pursued by Ronald Reagan's drug enforcement agency. Through the magic that is the magic mushroom, the two stories begin to intertwine. And in the course of these stories, each of our William Shakespeares discovers the Shakespeare that he is destined to be. So how does Hollywood connect with that? Well, first of all, the fact that it's a dual timeline story. I always wanted to tell a story of Shakespeare in 1582. This is the year that he's 18 years old. He knocks up local farmer's daughter, Anne Hathaway, and gets dragged into a shotgun wedding. That's part of the historical record. And I was trying to figure out a way to make it not just another historical novel, make it accessible to a modern audience. And I was watching a film, recent cult classic that deals with a character who gets trapped in two timelines, in a parallel universe. And he's trying to figure out how to get back into his own timeline. And he learns that in order to do so, you need some sort of an artifact. In this movie, it's actually a metal artifact that you have to have in order to accomplish the travel back into the parallel timeline. Does anybody happen to know what that movie might be? Modern cult classic, directed by Richard Kelly? No, although it's a good one.
Christopher Reeves is in it.
No, it stars Jake Gyllenhaal.
Donnie Darko?
Donnie Darko.
Yeah.
And for this young lady over here, I'm going to be doing a few questions like this, testing your Hollywood knowledge, and giving away as door prizes. God bless Vistaprint. You know, you go online and you order your postcards for your book, and it's like, would you like to buy a tote bag or a monogrammed coffee cup? I have some My Name is Will audiobook now available, refrigerator magnets to give away. That's one for Donnie Darko.
University of Alaska.
University?
And I hate Palin too.
Hate is such a strong word.
Okay.
I can think of stronger ones. So once I decided I was going to do this dual timeline story with a modern component that would, via the artifact of the mushroom, bounce back and forth between the two stories, I started looking around for a model to base my story on. And my favorite dual timeline story has always been an award-winning novel that from the 1970s, I believe, that was turned into a movie in the 1980s, adapted by a very famous playwright who wrote the screenplay for the movie. Anybody getting a hint of it yet? Sorry, no?
French lieutenant.
The French Lieutenant's Woman is exactly correct. John Falcone.
What we won't do for Magnet.
Thank you. And I always love that movie because of the way that the two timelines aren't just separate, but they in fact intersect, and the two timelines begin affecting each other in wonderful and mysterious ways. So when I sat down to actually write what was my first novel, as everyone is when they sit down to write their first novel, they're a little bit flummoxed about how exactly to begin. And I didn't know that much about writing fiction, but I do know about writing screenplays. I've been a screenwriter for many, many years, so I decided to start with what I know. My Name is Will is divided into 3 parts, 3 books. And that's not because of any grand stylistic distinction between the 3 parts or a shift of point of view or any of that. It's because screenplays are written in 3 acts. And I know that if I get my inciting incident at the beginning and I have a cliffhanger at the end of part 1, then beginning, middle, and end is the oldest structure in the book. So that's how I started with My Name is Will. I would use the small rules of screenwriting, things like always start a scene as late as possible into the action. That keeps the pace moving, the equivalent of throwing away the first two chapters you write always and starting there.
Check off.
Yes, exactly. Check. There you go. That's the refrigerator. You know, always end a scene with a button, show, don't tell. These are all things that are just good storytelling, and they apply in novel writing as much as they do in screenwriting. But I also used some of the larger structures of screenwriting to help me get through my novel. As a screenwriter, I was a big fan of John Truby, who's is one of the most popular sort of mentors for writers of screen in Los Angeles. His Anatomy of the Story, 22 Steps to Good Storytelling, is based heavily on Joseph Campbell's hero's journey. And I used it as a reference throughout writing My Name is Will. And of course, the most famous example of a screenplay that follows almost to the letter John Truby's story structure and Joseph Campbell's hero's journey is Star Wars. George Lucas admitted that he followed it as a template, almost step by step. So, for example, in the beginning of John Truby's story structure, you always have your inciting incident. In Star Wars, the inciting incident is what? Anybody? It's when the 2 droids land on this godforsaken